My point I call PIAC, means politically incorrect, maybe, but academically correct, I hope. Start uh, from some scope of awareness sharing. Because as an outsider, so-called non-white, non-black, coming from China, uh, I see things without involvement of the what Jamie called the trauma coming from a history of the black history in this country. So in a cloud folder, I shared a few video clips and pictures that I recently collected from social media. Uh, the reason I do that is that's how my concern got raised, because what I see now looks like very familiar in my history of China, namely they are from 1990, from 1966 to 1976. What happened inside China called the Cultural Revolution was a huge nightmare, and I see things similar today outside my window, to that back memory. And actually, that was two. Actually, there are two memories. That's only one. Cultural Revolution was one. The other one is between 1940s to 1949, when Communist Party took power in China. That was something happening all over Chinese cities. It's kind of a similar to what I see now. So that drive me very nervous, and I was kind of uh, frightened. And this concept of a racist is pretty new to me from my perspective. When in 1995, I was working at California State University as an assistant professor. I had a huge argument with the other business professor on terms of how do we design our business program. And at that time, our fight was brought to the authorities, to the provost, and etc. And I was told by my colleagues that my opponent, Professor Tom Anderson, and they told me he is a racist. So I said, what that mean? I said, because you are Asian and you are treated as well, and you are treated as in a racist way, and you are not supposed to argue with him, blah blah blah. So that's a long story, but I just want to say that I'm purely a pizza boy on this issue coming, and but when Obama was elected and people were so excited, not because of his merit, but because of his color, I start feeling a little bit uneasy. Says, well, this politicians needs to be judged by the color. How about their actual performance? And I now figured out what was wrong is something I call abuse of value, AVO, AOV. It is a dangerous trend, in my view, currently going on in many advanced countries under the flag of this thing called political correctness. Because I'm quite sensitive to this political correctness simply because I come from a society that political was not just correct, it's absolute correct, and every dissent and any different voices are considered dangerous to be to be oppressed. So that was my background. Now, then I would like to promote this perspective from a civilization evolution. Uh, Evolution based on law of self-organization is the fundamental force of life that negates the fate of the second law of thermodynamics. And our civilization evolves in a similar pattern that biological lives evolve in terms of the DNAs, genes. Here in the society, I call cultural genes, and they are metabolic processes, and they have mutations and natural selection and survival of the fittest, etc. My point today, major point, is that civilization evolves without a certain direction. So it's full of try and error. History goes into better times or worse times randomly. Of course, small groups like Margaret Mead suggest can intervene and can serve as some kind of a pioneering better ideas. But overall, if you look back to the history, you notice that going into better time and going into worse time are quite random. So we know better or worse only afterwards. That's my emphasis. It's only after reflecting on previous experience, and this means value systems or our moral system and ethical system. They only emerge after our experiences, good or bad, pleasant or disastrous. Like Peter just offered us very vivid examples of those bad experiences. But those experiences, to me, looks like a residual effect of the history before 1960s, when this racial issue got actually addressed from the perspective of law. So my point is, it is unfair to judge the past history with today's values. So that's my politically incorrect point today. Unintentionally doing so is ignorance, but intentionally doing so is abuse of value. And this principle applies to my views of slavery, colonialism, abuse of wealth, abuse of power, and all the bad things that ever happened in the past. I want to say that bad things happen in the past, but we only see it as bad today because we had reflection. We have reflected on those, and we figured out there are better ways to be human. But at old times, I don't think we need to blame George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and those people who had owned slaves at their time. Because my point is, current social status, current society status is actually an integral of all the summaries of all the actions being done by what I call action agents with their resources. So it's a cumulative processes. And for this action part, what we need to pay attention is to awakening all the stakeholders to participate. For example, vote, like Peter just mentioned, that if you want to participate in the whole process, you go vote. And for the sigma part, let me see, people's actions may run against each other. So some of their actions are canceling each other. And for this part, our effort should be put on, can we increase the coordination and the reducing conflicts? And for the integral part, can we focus on preventing unintended consequences? Because in many cases, we see that today's solution looks like a solution, but it brings a bigger problem for tomorrow. So what really matters, in my perspective, is to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of 5 Cs: cognition, communication, consensus building, coordination, and eventually co-construction. I think that is how our civilization goes forward. Uh, at the current, I see a lot of finger pointing with each other. Okay, there are people supporting BLM, there are people against BLM, and and the two parties looks like fighting each other, want to eat each other as lunch. Uh, and there are people who subjectively adopt a victim mentality, the demand to destroy the foundations of our civilization. Uh, for example, private ownership and the rule of law. I think this tendency is very dangerous and is civilizational suicide. So, uh, my second political incorrect view is that is this observation from outsider's point of view. The word of American blacks, I think, is the best already among all other societies run by blacks. Is this true or false? I'm not sure if Peter will agree with me, but from my perspective, you have sports stars, movie stars, so many professionals. You even have a president, and that's much better in the situation in China, and in situation of China is much worse than slavery.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Okay. So overall,
it's always great to get back to the good old USA. Okay, even despite all its trials, tribulations, and
yeah.
and
So my point is,
it's still the best.
Compare with. I mean, how do you get a even better society? It's not just. Please do not destroy this one because I escaped China 3 times to become American. I don't want people trying to destroy America. I have nowhere to go. So for the overall education levels, overall living standard, compared with any black-run countries in Africa and Latin America, who else are doing better? So if you don't have who else doing better, then please let's focus on how to improve ourselves instead of destroy the system. So residual discrimination is what I see, including the examples Peter just mentioned. I think for those individuals you encounter, yeah, they have discrimination, they have a habit, but your other neighbor apologize to your dad, so they can change. And but for the institutionalized, I have difficulty to acknowledge this, because if, in my perception, if institutionalized, it should be written in the law. But currently there are no laws, maybe some covert rules hidden somewhere, but that is resolvable, I think. On the other hand, your taxi driver is stereotyping you, profiling you, and there is a reason they fall into that kind of mentality, the mental model in Jimmy's word, because some kind of a simple statistics that says that the crime rates of black looks high. So that is the cybernetic question I think we need to focus on. What causes that higher crime rate? So here really we need to invite Stuart to draw a cause and effect diagram. We have high crime rate, and we have many single parent family, black single parents, and we have a lack of education, we have a domination of violence, we have a drug abuse, we have outlaw activities, etc. And most importantly, what kind of a value system is working here? Here I put 2 sides. One side, why these countries are all in trouble. Somali, Haiti, Libya, Zimbabwe, South Africans, and Venezuela. Okay, the last 2 are not, last one is not black, but but it's socialism value system working on there. So I want to ask from this side, what cultural genes messed this society up? But on the US side, Jenny already mentioned this thing called uh, redlining, something. Okay, uh, I I got some knowledge about how things developed into today's situation. Noticed that after the 1965, after the segregation law was abandoned, and what happened is the richer blacks move out of previous black communities, and and broke the ecology of the self-sustained feature. So those black areas become, the districts become more and more poor, less and less tax to build the city. And the redlining thing and zoning policies, the banks and the insurance companies discriminating black people, and making things worse. I mean, they setting things in a virtuous circle, and getting worse and worse. And this Anti-Drug Abuse Act, I noticed the difference between they prosecute the drug abuser by the difference of if you own cracks or if you own powder, and they are 100 times difference punishment. So what happened here is that the cracks, solid cracks are kind of less expensive, so consumed by black users, and the powders are more expensive, so consumed by middle class and white students. So in this kind of policy ended up more blacks in the jail instead of whites put in the jail. And also there is this bailout policy, pre-trial detention, etc. And blacks coming from a poor family cannot afford that. So that put more and more blacks in the jail, in the prison, and they developed the prison mentality and bring them back to the streets, to the kids. So, and also a terrible thing I see is the privatization of prisons. So getting people into the prison or even release them out of the prison all become businesses. That I think is very problematic. And also this Prison Litigation Reform Act, I heard that the effect here is to make more and more black prisoners hard to get their justice or get corrected. So this is the institutionalized problem that contribute to the vicious circles. But here I would emphasize that maybe some kind of a cultural gene or cultural beliefs on black community also need to be changed. And I noticed that some people from a black community promoted some what I hear as good ideas, but Peter tell me they are all Uncle Toms. So that's my another puzzle. So why a good Uncle Tom become a bad one? So,
hey,
but
Jason.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, and I know that you're on roll, but I got to go soon, and so does Gimme.
So this is the last one.
Yeah.
What's the solution? Or maybe it's the
Yeah.
topic for our next meeting. So I don't think that a 14 trillion proposal is feasible, effective. Dissolve police and law enforcement is, I have doubt on that. Divide the country into two. Do we want to do that? And people are talking about another civil war coming. So that is my last point is, how could our cybernetics tools help in this 5C processes? figuring out what's really going on. Can we converse with no violence? Like today, we can sit together and present the different perspectives. And consensus building process is so important for the now, and perhaps for the better co-construction of the future. So that's my 7 slides. This is the 7th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
interesting.
you, everyone.
See everybody. It was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Nice meeting. Yeah.
Excellent.